Switch to
Maybe
Spotify.
Yep.
And it's free.
Yeah.
It's free, and also you get to do video, and they have a subscriber platform now.
Did you start a subscription?
I did.
Is it like $4.99 or something?
$4.99 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Mo.
You just double check, sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Let me get my lip gloss.
Just want to make sure everything
Run in.
Yeah, I'm going to take a big swig of water.
Yes, we're definitely not rolling.
Awesome. Thanks, Mo.
Lip check.
And then all have already done like a read-in on
Yeah.
you and our past recordings and all that. So
Yeah.
we'll kind of just dive right in.
Cool.
All right.
Mm.
All right, welcome back. It has been, I think, 3 other podcast recordings that we've done, and here we are in 2025. It's January, and I think my big question for you is, how's the last year been? What have you been up to? Give us the rundown. The listeners are kind of familiar with your journey of going from photographer, and then started your coaching business, and then you launched Modern Psychedelics. What has the last 12 months brought to you, though? What's exciting and what's been filling your time and your weeks?
Let's see. It's definitely been a year of, I would say, like a lot of change in terms of just like the way that I live my day-to-day life and how that influences how I show up for my businesses. But business is...
Yes, plural. She's a multi-passionate, everybody.
Yes. I would say the major thing, like business and entrepreneurship wise, that's happened this past year is that I launched my first CPG product, which is so funny. I always said I will never ever launch a product because you got to do the SEO and you got to do the AdWords, and like that's a whole other beast than selling digital products. But you know what? This plant medicine called Kana came into my life over 2 years ago now, I would say, and I've just built such a relationship with it, and I realized, oh my God, there's no one in Canada selling this stuff. How is that possible? So I am proud to say that I am the first Kana entrepreneur, Kana vendor in Canada. I like to call it Canada.
There's so many little play on words that you can do here.
Yeah, and I actually started that with my mother because, so just like a really quick rundown, Kana is a psychoactive that is legal, but it's kind of similar to taking like a psychedelic microdose in terms of like the intensity of the effect. And so my mom, who is 65, really fell in love with it for her anxiety. Wow. And I ended up falling in love with it, and we were like, oh my gosh, should we do this? And the opportunity just fell into my lap, and I had just returned from a pretty massive psychedelic medicine retreat that was so expansive in so many ways, and I was just at a place where I was like, I'm not going to be in my way about this. The opportunity is here. I literally have someone who's offering to like hold my hand and guide me through this and like help me bring Kana to Canada, and we're just going to do it. So that was major. And we officially launched that in September. And then I had a moment where my coaching practice was fully booked, which was really, really exciting. So I was juggling 10 clients.
Wow.
I completely restructured how I'm doing my coaching. So I restructured it from a 3-month to a 6-month container for my clients, and just overall have been showing up in a much more powerful way. And then podcasting, it's been up and down, but Modern Psychedelics is still kicking, still going on to 4 years now. February will be 4 years since I released the first episode, which makes the platform about 5 years old. And I've continued to release episodes. I was doing an episode a week for the longest time, and I've kind of pared it back to every other week because that feels good. So lots of growth. That's just kind of the business realm of things. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. There's so much that I want to dig in on there. And what I think is so cool about you is that you do share a lot of your journey in real time. And even thinking back to 5 years ago, like, you always had that mindset of just keep going. Like, the payoff is going to come. And I'm sure it wasn't always that way, but if you could rewind to, let's just say 5 years ago, just starting Modern Psychedelics, starting your coaching practice, what do you wish you knew back then? I know this is such a stereotypical question, but I'm just curious, like, knowing what you know now, what would you tell 5 years ago, Lana?
People are not going to like this, but I would tell myself, don't quit your day job too soon.
Oh, I love this advice. Let's dig into this.
I got like certified as a coach, and I was like, oh yeah, like it'll be no time until I'm like fully booked, and
just like delusional confidence, which is good in some ways.
I will say that like the financial aspect of going into entrepreneurship and being a coach and just like, you know, making money in unconventional ways and making a living for yourself, doing something that you truly love and are passionate about, it's such a long journey, and
it is. Like,
I can't really say that I'm where I want to be right now.
Yeah.
Like, I can't sit here and lie to you and say like, oh yeah, like I'm like this is going to be I'm entering my 3rd year as a full-time coach.
Yep.
So it hasn't been that
No,
long.
in the grand scheme of things, that's like a blip in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I imagine if you were to share where you were at 3 years in, like you were probably still figuring it out. Like I'm truly still figuring it out in terms of like how to actually make a living, like a solid living that can sustain me, and like, you know, I want to make enough money to also like support my parents as they're going into retirement, and you know, it's been a journey, but you know, things are always on the up, which is good. But I just wish I gave myself a little bit more of a cushion, a financial cushion in that first year or two. I was just, you know, bless my heart. I was just so passionate and so excited to like get going and focus my energy, and I was just as annoyed and frustrated with the corporate world as sure anyone here listening who is thinking of making the leap into entrepreneurship is. But I really wish that I held on a little bit longer and like really I wish I was a little bit more thoughtful about the financial aspect of the reality of how long it takes to get something off the ground.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, that's the advice that nobody really wants to hear, and there's this sexy narrative around leap and the net will appear, or go all in if you really want to commit to this, like you can do it. And I'm like, I don't know, man, like it's a tough journey out there, and it does take many years of experimentation to know what's going to work for your particular business. And so I know even in my journey, like I was working for people for the first 6 or 7 years, taking consulting contracts, freelance gigs. I remember I went fully self-employed like 3 years ago, and then one of my clients wanted to hire me full-time. So I'm like, okay, I'll balance this on top of, but I really think for me that took away the desperate energy of needing clients now and being able to just show up and plant seeds in a timeline that just felt a little bit more realistic. But I just think it's a very important reminder that what we see on the internet of people making 6 figures when they started their business yesterday, it's like there's got to be a lot of nuance to that conversation, and I think it's important to also know what level of risk tolerance you're willing to take on. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so rewinding back 5 years ago, what would you say were some of the most important things that you did in order to set you up for those marginal improvements that you were talking about?
I think at the beginning it was so important to have like support systems in place. So I worked with a coach myself, like a life coach, a core energy coach, which is what I eventually went into. And that was really important for me to work through some of those confidence issues, some of those fears of being seen, some of those fears of like putting myself out there and really like stepping into who I am and what I have to offer, and like really helping me own the vision that I have for my life and what I want, and like really start to believe that that life is possible. So that was instrumental. I also worked with you in that first year. Like I'm pretty sure I hired you as soon as I
you had just gone out on your own. Yeah, because I was just like not really sure what to do and how to start and how to build a webpage, and I had a lot of experience in digital marketing and social media marketing, but that's a whole other thing. I was not
well versed in messaging and like how to write compelling copy and like what people want to see when they get on your website and like how to create a program. And so that was really, really helpful and a good investment. And then what else was useful 5 years ago? I think having like daily habits and routines during that time were really helpful. And it's funny because I'm in a very interesting place right now with like daily habits and wellness practices right now. And
what, have you just gotten rid of them all?
I don't really need them as much anymore because it's interesting. Like I'm like pretty.
Are you just feeling at peace with this phase of like you don't feel like you need to be rigid about I gotta get up and get to the gym then have protein and
exactly. No, that's like I've said this on my podcast before, but I've given up the wellness superstar dream.
You can always reignite it if you want to.
Yeah,
step into your influencer days.
It's more like a sprinkle every now and then when I need it. I mean, I'm getting back into exercising, which I let slip. But I've been having fun going to Pilates and yoga classes, and I want to start running and incorporating that into my life. But the morning routine was really important back then. Now I just sleep in until I wake up, and that goes much further for me than like waking up to journal or whatever. That's just where I'm at right now. But I think in those early days, having those routines and like empowering habits.
It's like a metaphor for life. Like at first, sometimes the discipline serves us and almost leaning into that masculine energy of like follow the blueprint. And then at some point we almost like cross this bridge where it's like, okay, I've got my dose of that and I understand what works now and what doesn't. And now I want to lean into more of like that feminine energy or just that more intuitive approach to life and business, right?
Yes.
Of like, maybe I don't need to follow everybody else's playbook for success.
Well, why else do we become entrepreneurs?
Right. Yeah, because we want to do our own thing. But then we end up asking everybody else for advice. What social media platform should I be on? I'm going to go to ChatGPT and get it to write an email for me. Instead of pausing and saying, no, I'm in charge. I hold the vision. And by outsourcing everything in my life to everybody else and every guru that's ahead of me or person I think is, I'm actually like losing what it means to be free and to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're saying like you unwound some of those rigid routines in order to step into a new chapter and be open to what is a life without this rigidity that I've been holding on to so tightly.
I love the use of the word rigid because I feel that I've become so much less rigid over the years, and it's really interesting to bring that into the framework of how do I want to run my business and how do I want to show up and like what does my day-to-day look like as a multiple business owner and as someone who's really trying to figure this whole thing out. And I think there's a place for rigidity and structure, as you said, but I don't know, when I lean into my intuition and when I make decisions based on my energy and just lean into that trust and allow things to flow and go, what I've learned over the years of doing that is that I am someone who figures it out and it gets it done. Like that is such a deeply held core belief that I have about myself as both a person and an entrepreneur, business owner, or whatever, but I just don't get as stressed as I used to anymore because I have a track record of figuring shit out and getting shit done. Like I have a proven track record. And so I just remember that and I try not to stress. And if I'm not like feeling the energy of like, okay, I have to write this email today, that's okay for me personally. And it seems to work for me.
So you don't force it then and say, well, I said I was going to. Like, are you saying you're in a season now where your track record, you can lean on it and say, I'm good. I'm not going to completely fall off the wagon here, and I'll get back on if I do.
Yeah, pretty much.
What a nice season to be in. Shifting gears, I want to talk about podcasting. So you started your podcast, Modern Psychedelics, 4 years ago. first of all, what is your general sentiment towards podcasting right now? Does it still light you up as it did? Because you and I are both, we've been in this a while. The landscape has changed. A lot of the listeners of this podcast, they want to start podcasts and are just curious of what the behind the scenes looks like. So would love to hear from you what's going on in your head around the podcast itself and what the future of podcasting is.
It's such a love-hate relationship, honestly. Like right now, podcasting is my medium of choice. It's my favorite medium. I love conversations. I love speaking. I love communicating my ideas in those ways. I love the connection that it creates between me and a listener. And I truly feel that it's like the best use of my time and energy to create change in the world and to spread information and to really connect with also as like a marketing tool, right? Like I would say 99% of my leads for coaching come through my podcast.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's incredible.
I mean, that's pretty much how people discover me as a platform and person. So as like a marketing tool, it's been a lot of fun and it's effortless and it's like a part of my creative process. What I'm really leaning into these days, Kelsey, is this identity of being a creative person.
Oh, wow.
I've never thought of myself as a creative person. And I tell that to people and they're like, you're so crazy. You're so creative.
Yeah.
And I've really taken that to heart and been reflecting on that. And I'm like, I am a creative. And one of my big intentions and goals for 2025 is to create structures and systems in my life that allow me to thrive as a creative, and that allow me to really just create and continue that energetic flow of turning ideas into tangible things that I can share with the world. And so that looks like podcasting, and it has looked like podcasting, and I love what it offers to me as a creative. I love producing shows. I love having like an idea pop into my head, and you know, I chew on that idea for 2 months, and then I like create a podcast episode about it. I love that.
Yep.
So many things I love about it. And then there's like the things outside of my control.
Downloads.
When it comes to podcasting, that I'm like, ugh, that are really frustrating. You know, I have experienced like a bit of a dip in listenership over the last few years. I have chalked that up to, you know, the algorithm changing as we like to, but also it's so much more competitive now in the psychedelic space. Like literally, like Huberman Lab is talking about psychedelics, and like like these big names, and it's like, well, why would I listen to this girl from Toronto when I can listen to Andrew Huberman?
Oh, this is so relatable.
Like, but guys, I know a lot. It's not even that I know a lot, but I think I have something to like really unique to share about psychedelics and being on the medicine path and transformation. And so the struggle is in the discoverability, because I truly feel that I have something so powerful and valuable and unique to offer. And for me, it's just a matter of like, how do I get in front of more people?
Podcast swaps.
Podcast swaps.
I think that is like
you're coming on mine soon to talk about how people can get started in their psychedelic businesses.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be fun. So yeah, I truly love